All right, Andy joins me for this episode of the Shea Anything podcast. Let's see what to discuss. Jacob deGrom will return to the Mets rotation. How do the Mets want him to pitch, but also wrap him in bubble wrap moving forward so he doesn't join the list once again of injured players? We'll talk Luis Rojas. We'll talk Zack Scott moving forward. What should his next move be? It all starts right now on the Shea Anything podcast. Welcome to the show, everybody. Doug Williams and Andy Martino with you on this, what is for us, Monday afternoon. A reminder to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. And please hit the subscribe button, even if you download per episode. Subscribe. It really helps us out. Reminder that we're brought to you by Verizon. It's 5G built right for the Mets from the network more people rely on only on Verizon. I had a great experience with Verizon last night. I needed some help. I was having some picture issues on some channels on my cable service, and I called and they reset it for me, and it was fast and easy, and I really appreciated that. So I know
you're not burying the lead of this podcast. That is the most interesting thing to our listeners.
Now, look, could I complain about the fact that it was TNT and I was trying to watch the Knicks game and I couldn't because the picture was freezing? I could complain about that.
My picture froze on TNT, and we're in different areas.
Yeah, that's true. But instead, I'm going to choose to praise the customer service that I got from Verizon. And again, the sponsorship element is 5G, so it's the cellular network, not my cable. But Fios is a pretty good service. All right.
It's also built right for the Mets. I mean,
it is built right for the Mets. Yeah, it is. It's dead right for the Mets. Okay, 3-batter rule, Andy. I thought this was very creative of our producer, Jeff Goldman, who on the rundown said, injuries, what is happening here? Do you have any insight into how these muscles are being strained?
Yes.
So, for example, can you give me an educated guess as to how Pete Alonso gets hit by a pitch on the hand and wrist, and that slowly turns into a sprain? How is that kind of thing happening to the Mets right now and seemingly nobody else?
I think that the ball on the wrist and the ball on the face plays are not, things that we can look too much into. The Alonso thing sounds by all accounts like the classic, like, hey, it hurts. Let's get treatment every day. Let's try to play through it. Okay, 2 weeks went by. We're better off resting it than playing through it. I think the only time, and this question's been asked a lot of the Yankees over the past couple of years too, the only time you can really look at an organization and the training staff is when you have too many soft tissue injuries, right? Like wire quads and calves and those kinds of things getting strained all the time. The Mets, I mean, there's so many different things going on, right? You have like people getting injured in all kinds of weird ways. So I don't know that there's any rhyme or reason. I really don't think there's anything going on, but a team that's just gotten hurt by one of those rashes of injuries. I'd be more worried if I was a Yankee fan and your superstar is Aaron Judge and they're trying to do load management at 30 years old or whatever he is without admitting it and all those kinds of things. I don't see, like, the Mets are working towards making advances in the medical biomechanical field, and that's part of the goal under Alderson and Zack Scott and the new regime. It'll take a little time. I don't really see anything going on here. Jordan Yamamoto's shoulder is sore. Okay. Sometimes randomness is randomness.
Yeah. Well, I think the obvious comparison is the Cameron Maybin connection, which is the 2019 Yankees. The last time it felt like there was a team in this town that was this ravaged by injuries. And I think that the Mets, tonight on Baseball Night in New York, we have Jim Duquette on the show, and Jim always talks about Memorial Day as when front offices kind of get together and talk about the state of the team. And that kind of moves us forward to our second 3-batter rule, which is
you know what? I'm sorry to interrupt, but I should say something. I was remiss. The side injuries in the pitchers is a bit of a pattern. And I don't want to let the Mets completely off the hook because I do think they were a little reckless in letting Taijuan Walker pitch through it. And I know they were decimated and everyone wants to be a tough guy. And I've been impressed by Taijuan Walker as a person so far. But I think in the organization there probably has to step in and say these side things, whether it's the lat or the oblique, we haven't really heard yet. deGrom had already had it and tried to pitch through it, and Walker did the same thing. They both ended up lost for more time because they tried to pitch through it. So I do think that was a bit of an error in judgment on the part of the Mets. So I don't want to say I was making that randomness point before, but I do think they deserve criticism for Walker and a little bit of deGrom. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really strange one, Andy, because in both cases, when they got put on the injured list, Rojas talked about mechanics, which I don't know about you. I've never heard an injury get diagnosed, MRI comes back clean. We're still going to put him on the injured list so that he basically learns to pitch with it. Or we figure out what exactly in his motion is leading to side soreness. Like that part is very weird.
It's obviously vague the way that they had us.
Right. We don't know what we don't know.
Yeah, I do know that they were trying to get Walker through this thing, trying to keep it from public view. And then they couldn't anymore because he came out of the game. And it was like, wait a minute, guys, come on.
Right. I mean, that's why he wasn't swinging the bat, which was a big part of your reporting on it, which was like, how do you send a guy to the mound if he can't do that part of his job? Like,
yeah. It's like, okay, the side's a problem if you can't swing the bat. And the side is so easily re-aggravated. Again, the side, the way teams put it, I guess we're like, these are hockey teams now. They're giving you a general area of the body. But the side could mean lat, serious. The side can mean oblique, serious in the sense of length, if not, huge long-term concerns, both of which can be re-aggravated by use. So feels a little reckless. Now on to the second 3-batter rule.
Yeah. So as I was saying, we're talking to Jim tonight about how, if you're Zack Scott and Sandy Alderson, you have the Memorial Day state of the team meetings if the team is the AAA team. And I'm not saying that facetiously, like that.
Literally.
You can't realistically, if you're the Mets front office, have that meeting yet because you're not going to have Janesh Fargas if you make the playoffs in the outfield or Khalil Lee. You're not even going to have Jose Peraza on probably your active 26-man or whatever it is now roster. So
the rate we're going, Jose Peraza is going to be the representative at the All-Star game. So don't be so sure.
That might actually be true. So what do you do if you're Zack Scott, Andy, and the Mets front office? How do you build on this without trying to, overreact to what's been going on?
Yeah, there's no action that Zack Scott can take to save the season if the season's going to go this way with injuries, right? You can make minor moves and tweaks and think he has to be as active as he can on the waiver wire, and as they're doing scouting guys in AAA like Maben, who might possibly be able to contribute at the major leagues, and the Maben they bought, as we said, they purchased Maben from the Cubs for $1. So oftentimes you can get guys if you have a major league opportunity. So doing that, and really that's it. If everyone's going to get hurt, you're not going to win this year. There's nothing a GM can do.
Last week, you brought up Kendrys Morales for the Yankees and how they got him for $1. And then the Maben story happened right after we did the podcast, and that's got him for $1.
There you go. So $2 for two pretty darn good careers there. Two guys who are past their prime at the time. So you keep trying to do stuff like that, and that's it. I really think that's all you can do. You certainly don't go trade for Chris Bryant or something if you weren't going to anyway. And it's not like one move like that, no matter who you bring in, is going to be a game changer when you have so many injuries. You just have to be grateful that it's a long season, be as careful as you can in the rehab process, have a culture where you're not rushing people back, and hope the team can win as many games as they can. Every win right now that the Mets can get with this roster is just a gift from the baseball gods.
Yeah, it's like it's going to feel like a miracle, like it did Friday. It's like, how did that happen?
Oh my God, you won a game, which is
every win for the Mets with this roster is going to feel a little bit like that.
But it really counts. And what I mean by that is that just get out of this period of time with as many wins as you can get, so you're set up to be the really good team that you actually are over the long haul. Don't rush Pete Alonso back. Don't rush deGrom or Syndergaard or any of these guys. And they're not so far. They hopefully learned some lessons from, again, having deGrom and Walker pitch when they did. But there's nothing really. A GM is at the point where You just have to. It's minor things, minor tweaks is the best you can do.
Yeah. Well, speaking of rushing deGrom back, I want to move to our third three batter. So he is such a uniquely interesting guy to talk about coming back from injury, Andy, because normally a player that great, you'd be like, well, the Mets need him now more than ever. They need him to win games. But deGrom, the Mets find ways to lose so many of his starts. So I don't even think any Met fan out there is when deGrom comes back, we'll be fine. We need him, because even as great as he is, the Mets somehow have not even taken advantage of the ability to win the games he starts. So
plus it's once every 5 days anyway, right? It's not the NBA where you can design everything around your star. So
and any Met fans also thinking, I mean, even if deGrom comes back and he's supposed to come back on Tuesday and pitch against the Rockies, Cameron Maybin's going to bat third. So are we really now going to score 7 runs for him after years?
I think you and I know enough baseball, Doug. I've watched enough baseball to know that the Fargus Lee Maybin Mets will give deGrom 11 runs when the main guys couldn't. Don't you know by now that that's how it works?
I guess that is true. Baseball is so weird. How do you handle him, Andy? If you're going to be critical of the way that they handled him and more Taijuan Walker, how should the Mets handle him coming back?
Wait until you're really, really sure as you can be. Chance of a re-injury is always possible. I mean, he hasn't had long rehab outings, and my understanding is that the side soreness is sort of built through an outing. So I guess you do have to cross your fingers a little bit. You can't keep him in bubble wrap. You're paying him a lot of money, and he wants to compete. So it is a tricky one. I don't think that bringing him back Tuesday is necessarily rushing him back, but we'll find out if he leaves. I don't mean to be like if he leaves in the second inning. There's no evidence he's going to do that.
No.
He might be just fine. It's easy for me to sit here in my little kids' room with my Kellen and Hobbs poster behind me and say, hey, Mets mishandled this. They have access to medical information, and the training staff and the rehab staff doesn't want to hurt deGrom. But you got to be careful because they didn't necessarily make the best decision on Walker, as I already said. I wish I had a more specific answer for you, Doug. But
no, I know. But as you know, these days, especially when a team is ravaged by injuries like this, Luis Rojas speaking pregame is, we have to watch and listen because we will get all the updates that we need to put into the show at 6. So when deGrom pitched in it was Port St. Lucie, the next day, Rojas was asked about it, and it still didn't seem like it was 100% certain when his next start would be. Now we know it's going to be Tuesday, but it took a while for that to be official.
I think they're cautious too with what he says publicly. For example, I knew for a fact that Yamamoto was starting a game this weekend, and when Rojas was asked about it, it was kind of like a maybe, we'll see. But I was like, I've got through sources that he's pitching Saturday or Sunday. So I just do think that they don't want. I'm not calling him out for being dishonest or anything. I just think strategically they maybe that he likes to keep it a little looser. Like he admitted lying. This guy obviously doesn't like to lie because before the game, which one was it? He was like, Alonso. Hey, do you have Alonso tonight? Yeah, it's just a day off.
He's played every game. He's played every game. Yeah. We wanted to give him a blow.
And then after he's like, I lied because it's competitive. So it's like, oh. So it's clear that he's getting some direction to be vague.
I was reading into it with deGrom, and if they weren't if he reported no soreness after a minor league rehab start, it was like, I am good to go. I felt like Rojas would have said that, and it makes me wonder if maybe this is going to be a manage and try and move forward with it. Yeah, it still hurts, but it hasn't gotten any worse.
Could be.
There's no sense doing more rehab starts. I might as well get back to the big leagues. I don't know. Again, it's pure speculation, but teams have to be careful in the way they handle this because, not only are you risking the health of the players, but people like us are going to talk about it and overanalyze it. And if you give us any information like the Mets have to, we can overreact to it like I'm doing. Right. But I don't know. It's complicated.
And there can often be a push and pull behind the scenes that creates that somewhat confusing language. For example, the Mets have deGrom for another year and a half about. They hey, let's go. Let's win now.
Right.
You're not getting any younger. deGrom's pitching for another contract. So, whoa, there's could be I'm not saying that's going on, but oftentimes those can be discussions that go on too. It's spilled out with Matt Harvey in 15, obviously, but it happens all the time behind the scenes between agents get involved in these things. It can be confusing.
Once again, you're listening to the Shea Anything podcast. Is brought to you by Verizon. It's 5G built right for the Mets from the network more people rely on, only on Verizon. So let's dig a little bit deeper into Luis Rojas and Louis. Jeff, you made a pun in the rundown that I don't think you meant to make. How do you think Rojas has handled the ups and downs of this season? Up downs are,
up downs. He made that phrase public this year, didn't he?
He did, and it came up again on Saturday with Joey Lucchesi, who's finally pitching well. And what did he throw? 43 pitches?
Yeah, but you know what?
And again, I was about to say, Andy, that this is the typical. Yeah, thank you. The typical what's happening to baseball? Let him pitch, and who knows? He might give up 5 runs the next inning. I don't know, but how do you think he has managed? Do you think that he is very much by the book, or do we not get a sense of the fact that he watches these games too and seems to manage with his eyes too?
Well, if you look at the fact that he's in a contract year himself, I'm sure, and getting to know Zack Scott and his new front office and Alderson, I'm sure he's cognizant of following some direction there. But he's also making all the pitching decisions himself and doing all these. There's no analysts in the dugout during the games. I think the Rays are the only team that have that. There's a quality control coach, but the way that these analytics situations work in game is that you get a bunch of options if you're the manager, and then you watch the game and you make the decision. So it was probably like, look, our data says Lucchesi's, if you can get him through 40 some pitches, count your lucky stars and get him the hell out of there. And he's going, okay. And that's what he did. So, it's a collaborative situation, but ultimately, there's nobody other than Rojas with advice from his bench coach who we really trust, Dave Joust, making these calls in the game. Obviously, you can have strong recommendations on strategy from your front office before the game.
So when Chili Davis got let go, it's funny because a lot of the conversations around something like hitting coach are like, well, it's more about philosophy. He's not the reason that a guy's hitting 200 or that a guy's hitting 350. And then I start to wonder, like, okay, then why hire them? If we keep minimizing what they do, then why is this a job that you wanted to fire somebody or hire somebody for?
Fair question.
So then we get to manager, and I am always curious about, so somebody like Luis Rojas, when Chili Davis got let go, it was like, well, organizational philosophy, they inherited this guy. He doesn't necessarily agree with the things that Alderson and Zack Scott do. Okay. Luis Rojas was also inherited. I don't know if the Mets won 110 games this year, if that would change anything. I don't know if Sandy and Zack Scott are watching the games and his in-game moves and being like, yes, very good, very good.
You don't know if Sandy and Zack Scott will have those jobs next year, by the way.
True.
A lot's up in the air.
So what can a manager do in 2021 to impress a front office?
Well, win. Ultimately, truly, primarily number one is win. And just, you can't fire a guy if he just won the division in 2 rounds of playoffs. He's coming back, and whether you like him or not. And that, honestly, the version of that happened with Terry Collins and Sandy over the years. Sandy was always right at the verge of let's move on from Terry, year in and year out, honestly. And then it was like the Mets just overperformed expectations, whether it was winning 70-some games and they're supposed to win 60-some or making it to the World Series or what have you. And Sandy never could find the moment where he could fire Terry until they both knew it was over, finally, after the 17th season. It took that long. So winning, whatever your expectations are, overperforming them. And secondarily, managing the game in a way that doesn't piss them off too much. Honestly, making the moves, and there's always going to be some stuff. There's always some stuff. Aaron Boone's Mr. Collaborative Manager, And he pissed off his own front office by playing Didi Gregorius down the stretch during Didi's last year with the Yankees because they didn't want him at short, and Boone did, and Boone wrote the lineup. So you're always going to get on the bad side of your GM day in and day out in one way or another. But don't do it that much. And they think he's a good human. I mean, look, this guy, let's put it in a little perspective here. Who else would be in the conversation for National League Manager of the Year right now than Luis Rojas? I mean, the Giants are overperforming. We don't watch enough of their games to say if Gabe Kapler is any less ridiculous than he was with the Phillies when he was horrible. But the Giants are way overperforming. So right now, if the season ended, wouldn't it be Rojas and Kapler alone in the Manager of the Year conversation? So win Manager of the Year and you're coming back.
Yeah, I mean, I guess Jace Tingler, like, Padres are a loaded roster.
That's not a real name.
No way. I think that's his name.
No, it is, but I still don't believe it.
That's the Padres manager, and the Padres may be like a World Series team this year.
Yeah, but that's got to be
it is Jace Tingler. Have you seen
I know that, but like I've
Fernando
heard the name,
Tatis,
but there's no way he's actually that called.
Fernando Tatis is 11 for 14 since coming off the COVID IL with like 2 grand slams, I think.
If the Padres win the division, you put Jace Tingler in that conversation.
Anyway,
I just don't think Luis Rojas is National League Manager of the Year to me right now on Memorial Day. Look at they're in first place and they're in the players.
I know. Aren't there though examples? And there's one obvious one that I can't think of. I think Joe Girardi's another of managers who win and still get moved on from.
Because Joe Girardi drives people nuts.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying that, like...
Oh, yeah, he won the manager. Let me tell you what happened there. And it's funny because that name just... I said you don't win Manager of the Year and get fired. There's only one way you do it. This is what happened. I'm paraphrasing a little, but I heard this story once from someone who was right there in the Marlins dugout. Towards the end of that season, Marlins owner Jeffrey Loria, who always used to sit right next to the dugout and be really engaged in the game, said something to Girardi. Girardi said something like, "Hey, I want to shut the fuck up. You can beat me." Or mind your own fucking business or something. And that got him fired, even though he won Manager of the Year. So if Luis Rojas does that to Steve Cohen, he's out, probably. Other than that, win that Manager of the Year and you're coming back.
I'm skeptical because in order to let go of Chili Davis in the middle of a season, you have to be really specific what you want from that role. Like, yes. We were told to minimize it almost. It's like, it's just the kind of the guy who's in the hitter's ear, but like, it's not the reason these guys perform or underperform. Okay. So if Sandy Alderson feels that specific about hitting coach, how do you imagine he feels about the guy who's walking out to the mound and making the moves? So like, that's part of the way I feel about Sandy. And look, he's an incredible executive and probably Hall of Famer, but like, he really like cares about what he cares about. And if Luis Rojas is not perfect for the way he wants this team to go in the future, then I think he moves on from him.
I agree with you. I think that it would take, I know exactly what you're saying, and I agree with you. Chili Davis is an extreme case because he had no use for him in the first place and pretty much wanted to move on before the season even started. Rojas, he's like, I'd like for this to work out. Great guy, great human. But I know what you're saying. He knows what he likes, what he likes, and he knows what he wants. And Zack Scott also, same way, no prior relationship with Rojas. So it's very hard to say. Win a playoff round, win Manager of the Year, neither of which is hard to imagine for the Mets this season. And you can't fire him. That's all I'm saying.
Let's finish our conversation today with this. On Baseball Night in New York, we have the conversation of like, because Recker's there specifically, who should get more playing time? Is it McCann or is it Nito? Now, I think the more interesting question to ask you, Andy, because we're talking a lot of front office stuff, is does James McCann's salary, whether consciously or subconsciously, factor into that conversation every day?
110%. Absolutely.
Consciously or subconsciously?
Consciously, but unsaid. How about that?
No, that's well put. So you think that unspoken, Luis Rojas looks at that every day and is like, I know they want this guy to succeed. I know Nito's playing better, but McCann's probably a better player, big picture, and he's making the money. They just gave him the contract. That's a way to keep the front office happy, is to play McCann.
Yeah, but the other way to keep the front office happy is win. Tough job managing a ball club. I think because you invested that money in him to be a frontline. What I was told when they signed McCann was he's a starting catcher for a couple of years, and you're comfortable with that contract if he's the backup for the last year or two. The backup thing can't start now for $40 million. So they got to make it work with him. They have to exhaust all possibilities, try to make it work with him.
I imagine if you're as rich as Steve Cohen is, and I was thinking about this with Lindor to start the year. First of all, I always think about how everything would be different in our job if we didn't know the salaries of players, which is interesting. If it weren't public information and we didn't know Lindor's contract, we just knew he signed an extension, and we didn't know what McCann made, how it would change.
The public didn't know they'd all be making like $50,000. There were no pressure. The owners were just able to do whatever they wanted. Come on, but go on.
So, if you're Steve Cohen, do you look at it like, I don't care how much James McCann's making? Like, or are you a savvy investment guy and you're like, well, if he's making that, he better perform up to it. I don't know. I might see a world where even an owner that rich is like, look, the salary is what it is to get him here.
Steve Cohen's
team on the field.
I highly doubt Steve Cohen's involved in these baseball operations conversations to that level, but I understand your point. Alderson and Cohen do both understand. Talked to Alderson many times over the years about what the sunk cost, and that's why they were strongly considering releasing Dylan Betances and might release Cano. If it's a sunk cost, it's a sunk cost. But you have to be sure they're not releasing McCann this year or next, first of all. But you're talking about playing time.
Yeah, I'm talking about
you have to be
being
sure
a backup
it's a sunk
catcher.
cost and not a slump. And I don't think they're close to finding that out yet.
All right, a reminder to subscribe to the Shea Anything podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you are listening. We appreciate it. And we're brought to you by Verizon. It's 5G built right for the Mets from the network. More people rely only on Verizon. So Mets fans, you have to hope that you get a couple more miraculous wins this week. You got Jacob deGrom coming back on Tuesday for this battered lineup to score 11 runs for, as Andy has predicted on the record. So thanks for listening, everybody. We will talk to you later this week.